I want to involve you in the process because I see that you're evolving. You're always evolving, Heather. I think you make an interesting person to talk to. So let's have a conversation like we almost never met.
Okay.
Okay, cool. I'll just give a little bit of a setup if that's cool with you. I'm going to start a podcast. It has a name. It has a loose concept. I won't I won't recite it right now necessarily because it will evolve. But I do want to take a moment to pause and take a breath and to tell you why I'm doing this. In the past, I've made films around pretty chunky topics, and they've often been done off grid. So I'll interview a series of people, or I go away and I do something for 6 months, and it's all done behind the scenes. I never really show anything to anyone about that process. So it's partly about opening that up a little bit. There is some concern about showing a more raw version of myself and the process, of course, which is something I'd like to talk about a little bit about being vulnerable. I think that the theme maybe will be around healing. And you're my first interview, and I'm super grateful for that. So thank you very much for participating. So maybe you could just start from the beginning. Maybe you could introduce yourself, your background. I'd like you to imagine that my mum's right here and she doesn't know who you are. She may not understand your professional background in the same way I might. So could you just start there, please, and just introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Heather LeFevre. I live in Oakland, California now, and getting here from Texas, where I grew up, has been a long journey. I would say I started out my life very much in Reagan's America, get good grades, go to a good school, get married, follow the script, and that didn't always serve me. So I started my working life in advertising and strategy, and I got married really young at 22, and those two factors really influenced my adult life quite a lot. So I lived in Texas and then Boston, Massachusetts, Richmond, Virginia, and decided to get a divorce. And then I lived in Miami, Florida, moved to Amsterdam. So all of these things of exploring and seeking have been an important part of my life. I got I decided to write the book. So I wrote a book about marketing strategy where I went and apprenticed myself to different people and lived with them in their home for 2 weeks each. And that book became brain surfing. And in that period of time, I met another person and got into a relationship and we got married. We moved to Miami and he was European. So we had to get married to stay together. And let's see, kept working and then lived nomadically around America. So by doing the book, I lived nomadically around the world, came back to America, lived nomadically around America, still exploring. And in that process, I developed chronic pain in my hip and shoulder. And that really sent my life into a new direction where I was exploring lots of different treatments, spending quite a lot of money on physical therapists and chiropractors and things like that, being told by traditional doctors to take very strong prescriptions and potentially get surgeries. That didn't sound like that was the right thing for me to do. One thing that I missed sharing was when I first moved back to the US, to Miami again, I had a doctor discover I had a fibroid tumor. So it was like the size of a steakhouse baked potato. And they were like, you have to get this out. And I decided to have an open surgery rather than a closed surgery. And by doing that, the difference between is orthoscopic surgery is where they put like a camera in one small hole and something to grind up and suck out the tumor in another small hole, and as opposed to a C-section where they opened my abdomen, took the whole tumor out and cut it off. By doing that, I didn't understand what open body surgery does to your connective tissue. And that really advanced the pain happening much more quickly because it wasn't just the surgery, it was the wearing the high heels, it was living a stressful life, it was not necessarily understanding what is aligned for me. All these things come together.
No, it's okay if I just interject. I really love that you've actually basically set this. you've alluded to the structure of what I want to cover essentially, which is
Okay.
your early lives, writing the book, the Project 100, and I just want to take a moment to pause on, say, your early career, because when I'm and so I'd love to come back to some of the things that you just mentioned as we move on, but I want to just go back to pursuing this early career and strategy. You talked about certain parts of the world and your professional realm not serving you. I'd just like to tune into that a bit. Like, what inspired you specifically to pursue this career and strategy at the time?
It was the best fit for me. It, like, maybe wasn't 5 out of 5 stars, but it was probably, like, 4 out of 5 stars in terms of suiting my personality, keeping me interested. I don't think I've shared this with you when I saw you in Amsterdam. I have learned that I'm autistic. There's a lot of women that are, like, not diagnosed. We're considered high masking to where you can't tell what's going on with our nervous system. And also using the word autism is very loaded, where most people have an image of a child, mostly white male child, who is really annoying. And it's like that their behaviors are so out of the norm that it's difficult for other people to deal with. And that's not actually what autism is at all. It's a different way of processing in stimulus that's coming into the body.
Could you describe that difference for me, for you personally?
Sure. From what I've understand about it, of if maybe 80% of the world is neurotypical and 20% is neurodiverse. Neurodiverse has many things. Some of them are things you're born with, like autism or ADHD, and some of them are happening at the same time. Borderline personality disorder is one of them. Struggling to think of some others, but also things that can happen in your life, like trauma, that can create a neurodiversity in your lifetime. And so if you think about, like, 80% of the world is more of like a dandelion and they can thrive in many different kinds of environments and grow. The neurodiverse are more like orchids and they need very particular environments in order to thrive. So in terms of the strategy work serving me or not serving me, times when I lived in Boston and worked at Mullen, where it was in a mansion in the woods, and we had lunch all together. We would all take a walk every day. So I was in nature. The surroundings, like the building, didn't have fluorescent lighting predominantly. Similarly, Strawberry Frog was like that. We did go outside quite a bit for lunch, get a little walk in. We didn't have fluorescent lighting. But then places that I've worked, like the lighting matters so much to me. And I had no idea until I came back and saw, oh, have you heard of the concept of window of tolerance? You
No,
like,
but I can infer what it means, but do tell me.
so you can either fall out of the window of tolerance at the bottom where you're hypo aroused, you're not getting enough arousal, leads to depression. The other end of the spectrum is hyper arousal.
I've actually covered this recently in therapy. We refer to it as like
Okay.
the nourishment cycle. Um,
Okay,
or
interesting. I haven't heard that
yeah,
phrase.
please go on. Yeah, this is interesting.
What I've realized is my window of tolerance is a fucking porthole.
What do you mean by that?
Most of the time that you have probably known me, I have been hyper aroused. Like
Mm,
this conversation that you and I are having is at a pretty even keel. Wouldn't you say most of the time I was like maybe a little bit more amped?
I would concur.
And you can see it. And like I couldn't see it until now. And it
Mhm.
took a year of massages to bring me down.
Yeah, can I just gonna throw in some random stuff here, but when we recently saw each other and we were walking down the street together, and you said some things to me that were really sweet and nice. You may not recall, but it was about appreciating me, and it almost felt like apology. I don't know if it was, but you were just like taking a moment to really like tune into where I was at or our history together. And I was just wondering if if there was any kind of connection to this idea of being quite amped up when we worked together versus where you're at now.
Maybe. Yeah, I don't know that I saw it that way. It was probably just me wanting to connect with you.
Yeah, apology is the wrong word, but yeah, I think so. I think,
Just greater awareness, greater self-awareness. Yeah.
yeah, I think that's wonderful. And I see that. I connect to that truth.
talked to like my past boss in Boston who does not know this about me. And he referred to me as crazy because you were crazy. That's not helpful. So,
These things that happen to us when we're, in our younger years of profession, they can really stay with us. I mean, we worked together and that had an impact on me, I think. Some of it was some of it was hard and some of it was really wonderful. If it's okay, I can share an instance, for example. Uh, you were very high energy and also very like super quick. You've got a million resources and references, a thousand books that you've read. And my approach to work has always been much more intuitive and feelings led. And at the time, and it wasn't your fault, but I felt like I needed to be like that versus
mm,
to be how I am. Was there any kind of, I'm curious, do you have any wait, 1 second. That was a negative implication. I also wanted to include a positive as well. You also taught me to get out there and to shake myself in the experience and to not be too reflective and too like senses led, but just get out of the world, live it, do something crazy, do something tangential. You encouraged us to do projects and side projects, and we had novelty hour, which is an incredible thing. So there was some really great experiences too. What was your experience of working with me? Curious. I just want to take a second to tune into that.
since I worked with you before I did the book, I think I probably did have a vision of an Uber strategist. And by doing the book, it made me realize that there's room for lots of different kinds of people and ways of approaching things. And you have to find your aligned way, the way that serves you. So I did not have that insight when we worked together, for one. I do think that I saw that we were all different and we had different. Yeah, I did believe in strength finders. I've always believed in that find your strength and push on it rather than worry about mitigating your weaknesses. And I always saw you as somebody who's very talented with design, with craft, with making the work look really good and how impactful that is on someone's emotion.
Yeah, no, I just come out of a master's degree, which was advertising and design. So I was definitely leaning on that when we were together. That was like one of the tools that as a junior, how can you help? How do you roll up your sleeves? Well, you help make the strategy more compelling. Yeah. So you talked a little bit about the book just now, and I think I was going to ask you what motivated you to write the book. But I think you just answered that question to a certain extent. W- I feel like lots of people these days are writing books and or starting projects. I'm curious to ask you, what did you learn from writing a book and how has it served you moving forwards?
I think one of the things that I didn't share about the motivation that motivated me was the Philadelphia cream cheese project we worked on. And we
Yeah.
produced this like 75-page document, and it's essentially about cheese when you boil it down.
Mm.
Wow, if we can produce 75 pages about cheese, you would think you could write 200 pages about something that you're genuinely interested in, which to me at the time was strategy. So that gave me the you can do this. And I think at any time, like now there's more tools that make it easier for people to produce their own ideas. And I think that was already starting to happen. And my ability to see that motivated me of, oh, you don't have to have an agent and some big publishing house behind you to be allowed to put out a book. But in terms of what it's done for me, one, it improved my writing so much that when I went into a job after finishing it, like I would be writing manifestos and things that also creative directors would be writing, and mine would get used. To have a creative ECD say to you, that's really great. That really happened from writing the book. And then also, it brought people to me wanting to work with me. It
Mm.
became a lighthouse of, oh, I want to work with this person because they're interesting.
Yeah, I have a confession to make. Um,
Right.
I haven't read all of your book.
That's okay.
However, I do no, because at the time you were writing it, I think you shared a chapter with me and Ashley, who's a colleague of mine, a friend of ours. And I don't know why, I think at the time I'm mildly dyslexic, officially diagnosed. I don't pick up books very quickly or easily. But now, with apps like Speechify and Read It Later, there's so many different ways to consume and learn these days. So it's not really such a friction point. Um, but I bought your book,
Thanks.
and I'm no, seriously, I was like, I have to read this. I haven't had. We only scheduled this call like a week ago, so and I read like the Pace for Tortoise. So I've only just basically started it, but I did reconnect with you as a person when I was reading the intro, which was written by Toma. How do you spell it? Is that
Toma.
yeah, no, it's really lovely. I love this quote. It was like a journey that honors the inspiration of an eat, pray, love while feeling more like Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy without a towel. And that sort of reminds me of our time together. We just, it's a very spontaneous, get out there and go shared experience that we had.
That time at Strawberry Frog, I was promoted from what the job that I'd had before to head of the department. And that was a lot for me. That was a lot of responsibility to me of what that meant. And it wasn't clearly articulated. It was only demonstrated from other people that I had worked with. So I put a lot of expectations on myself, which increased the rev of my nervous system.
Yeah, no, and it's great to be able to sit now. When was that? 10 years ago now,
Over 10
and
years ago. Yeah. It was 2010.
yeah, I'm grateful that we can talk about it. Yeah. So you've got a couple of tent poles in your life of like producing a big project. You had the survey before you had the book, and now you've got Project 100. There's for me are sort of three big items. If you look at these three, and first reflect at the last two, and then we'll pivot to the current. Like, what's the theme, if at all? Like, why do these projects? What's the impetus?
I think for me, I'm the person who wants to ask the question behind the question of when somebody was asking me, what salary do I expect? I want to know that I'm actually expressing something that is fair and reasonable rather than a guess. And then, so that was the benefit of
Once
doing the survey.
for everyone, you did. I didn't introduce the what you did at Plan a Survey. You did a survey amongst our professionals to get people to declare their salaries to help everybody understand their value and what they should be being paid fairly. That's what essentially was the Plan a Survey. If you want to add anything more to the context of that.
And I did it 9 times. Like the first time it was 120 people, and the last few times it was over 2,000 people. So
Hmm. And so, looking at the survey, looking at the book, and would you say is that is that also the case for this new project?
I would say the difference is those projects required a lot of going back behind the scenes and producing something like what you're talking about, your projects. Whereas
Mm.
Project 100 is I make it up as I go. It's a weekly thing.
Yes. Why don't you introduce Project 100?
Okay. So the impetus of that, I was interviewing for a job earlier this year and I realized, well, all of this is a lot of realizations, but you probably have heard of the idea of autistic people having special interests that they're very excited about. Have you heard of that?
Not
Yeah.
necessarily, no.
If you think about me and planning, that was my special interest.
Mm,
I could monologue about it and talk about it ad nauseum. And I wanted to know and do as much research about it as possible. And I was obsessed with it for a really long time. My special interest has I'm still interested in strategy, but I am much more interested in the human body now and
mm,
how it works. So going after a strategy job and meeting people for the first time, it was difficult for me to not just, it's called info dumping when you just feel like I am can't stop telling you about something. And I can
mm,
see it happening. And now that I have these labels for them, it's okay, dial it back, LeFevre. This isn't going to help you any. So it was pretty clear after a couple of interviews that if I want to get this job, I need to channel this interest in health in a way that is going to be serving me. I need a place to put it. I need a place to put all this motivation. So it was like, oh, let's do a Substack. And I can tell them as opposed to every person that I meet. That's really where it started. But right now it's a weekly newsletter that one, I like it because you can add voiceover. So it's a little bit like a podcast and you can embed in videos. And so it's got more texture and context than a book
Hmm.
for a presentation.
Where do you want to take it?
Where do I want to take it?
Hmm.
It's hard to see right now. I mean, I have an idea for another book that incorporates most of these things that I could see it becoming because it's now becoming quite a repertoire of writing. I also would like to do off-site digital detoxes where people come to me and we spend 2, 4, 6 days of movement and body work
Hmm.
and reflection, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, so you just touched upon another aspect of who you are, which is cranial sacral therapy. It's a hard word to say. Would you, yeah, can you talk a little bit about that for me, please? How that's a part of your life these days, and how is it connected to Project 100, but also how maybe you're integrating it into who you are up until this day?
So I would say craniosacral is one bucket of this greater, more like well-being health strategist that I see myself becoming. So I'm also certified in this movement modality called gyrokinesis. I'm almost finished with Pilates. So they're similar but different, which most people have experienced or seen or heard of Pilates, but both of these systems have their own bespoke machines that help move the body through its full ranges of motion, strengthening all of the muscles and fortifying all of the joints. Craniosacral came into my life. Like I decided to go to massage school because I just wanted to receive a lot of massages. Because within that bucket of chiropractors and physical therapists, I would also get massages and I would feel better, but it would be like in the same day, the pain would come back. So maybe I just need a lot of massage. And maybe you've heard of these in the US, there are not the same kind of places as there that I experienced in Europe. Did you ever go to Spa Zalver in Amsterdam?
I was there just last week. Yeah.
It's so great. I love that place.
The Spa Salver is a huge spa on the outside, the outskirts of Amsterdam, just by this big forest. There's so many different saunas and steam rooms and plunge pools and rainfall showers and infrared saunas, and there's a restaurant and there's a gym and you can have a massage. They have a hammam. It's extensive and it's definitely worth going. So they don't have
And
that kind of experience in the US at all.
it's affordable is what's amazing about it. It's like you can go and spend a whole day there and be a regular person. Whereas some of that exists here, but it's like in pockets. And I've discovered them over time. Like here we have, you can go get cryotherapy, do the floating tank, and do a sauna, a red light therapy sauna in the same place. But that will still cost you $200 to $300 for that 2 or 3 hour experience. Um, there's another place called Canyon Ranch. It's a chain, and I wanna say it's $1,500 a day to stay at a Canyon Ranch. So a lot of it is very luxury driven towards that ultra high net worth kind of audience. And what I decided was, like, I started going and doing Pilates and Gyrotonic, which is the parent company of gyrokinesis. All the things I like have very complex names that
Yes.
nobody knows about. And then I started going to massage school because massage school was $3,000 for 3 months. And you receive 3 to 5 massages a week as long as you go to class and you are also working on your fellow students. So I was 41, 42 at the time, and everyone else in my class was 21, 19. Even there was somebody who just finished like really young to 28. And I thought I was only going to go for 3 months, get a bunch of massages, and then I'll be feeling better and I'll go on with my life. And what happened was after 3 months, I still had pain. I could tell that it was working and it was decreasing, but I still had pain. I was learning a lot about my body and realizing, okay, keeping that shape of being hunched over a laptop for writing the book, sitting a whole lot, wearing high heels, all those things had changed my body shape over time to a degree that it was not going to change quickly back. And so I went in for another 3 months. You had to decide, are you doing the next quarter? So I go in for another 3 months. And at month 5, I still had this pain in my shoulder and hip. And yes, it was decreasing, but it was still enough to be bothersome. And one of my friends in Portland was like, "You should go see my neighbor Dave. I don't know what he does, but people travel from all over the country to see him." Like, okay, I'll see Dave. I've spent thousands of dollars seeing all these other people. Why didn't you tell me this 5 months ago? So I go to see Dave, and of all the things I had tried at that point, like we're talking, I had already spent like maybe $10,000 on different kinds of treatments and things, and then the massage school and stuff on top of it. And I go to see Dave and he barely touches me. And in my mind, I'm like, what kind of bullshit is this? This is a job? Like really barely touching a human. How could this do anything? But I could tell that I felt more relaxed and I trusted the recommendation enough to go again. And when I had that second session, I experienced what's called a somatic emotional release. So, soma, your body, emotional release from the body. I went into that appointment feeling like I was relatively normal. And within 5 minutes, it felt like he made me have this big emotion of I couldn't stop crying for the whole hour. So then I was like, what kind of warlock are you that was able to make me cry? And really within that week, it changed things for me of like, okay, the pain is really going away now. And I was like, how can soft touches do this? This makes no sense to me, even with the stuff that I'm learning. So that got me to finish massage school because the way the massage school is set up, the last quarter you can take elective courses and they had a craniosacral introduction course. So I went ahead and finished, and it also coincided with the pandemic. I'd finished 75% of massage school as the pandemic happened. So I had 3 months off to really just reflect because there wasn't a lot of strategy work going on. There wasn't any massage school. I was helping my now ex-husband at the time with his work and just gave me a lot of time to reflect. I'm like, yeah, I want to finish this. And I think I want to also practice this. So that's what I did. So immediately on finishing massage school, you have to do something like that. You have to have what's called like a license to touch. So that could be an occupational therapist, a registered nurse, or a massage therapist. You come in to these extra additional courses. So that's the way like touch bodywork stuff works. You get massage school is like getting a BA, bachelor's degree, and then you start getting master's degrees, but they're not there. It's one course at a time over 4 days, and then you learn a bunch of stuff, you go practice it. So I'm through like the first 4 levels of craniosacral, and there's 6 core levels, and there's probably 30 different courses on their menu right now.
I don't think you, apart from talking about the warlock Dave, you haven't actually like in simple terms
I
described
have a
this for
lot of
me. And also, I want to know in a very innocent way, where did he touch you?
okay, yeah, like all over the body and places that are appropriate, like basically other than your boobs and your butt crack, you could possibly be touched and your
But is it?
private places. Yeah.
But does it? Yeah, I understand that. But is it like touch me where the pain is, or is it like you pulled your toe and you have your shoulders pop open? Like,
It doesn't necessarily coincide with where you have the pain. So I predominantly had my pain in my shoulder and my hip. I'm pointing to my hip. And so it might be like he's touching me on my lower leg or he's touching my abdomen, my sternum. There's just really not a lot of correlation between where your pain is and where they touch you. So I'll explain. When you first take these courses, they'll bring out a toy like it's called it's gonna make a noise. So
okay,
I'm showing Ben an energy stick. It has a little bit of metal on each end, and if I touch both ends, it makes a sound and it lights up. And if you were able to reach through the screen and hold the other end, Ben, would it turn on?
if I could touch it, hmm, I'd like to think so, but no,
Okay.
yes. I mean, that's a.
The
I
answer
mean,
is no.
should but surely is it like it's an electrical circuit that goes only through your body, right?
So
You
knowing the word circuit is you are 5 to 10% of adults. Nobody really can come up with that. But to
okay.
create the circuit, you would have to hold it with one hand and then we would have to
Mm.
hold our other hand together because then we are connected. And even if we were in a circle with 1,000 people, it would turn on if it's all connected. And if one pair lets go, it would turn off. So that tells you, okay, how does the body work? Oh, the frontal part of your brain says, we're going to do this. The motor control part of your brain says, do it now. And let's do it this way. And then it's down the spine, do it now. Those messages are sent with salts and electricity. That's how that works. So that's one thing to, oh, maybe I don't understand the body quite as well as I maybe thought. Just seeing this and not understanding how that works of this just touch can create this circuit. So that's one thing. Some of the moves in CranioSacral are closing a circuit so that the nervous system can relax and release connective tissue and muscles.
But how does that, this is super interesting. How does, if you don't have this like thing to show a circuit being closed, how do you close the circuit in a part of the body, essentially? Is it just by a
It's
certain kind of
just
movement?
it's just two hands. So it's a bit of my nervous system. I'm the energy stick. You're the energy stick. And now the pathway is closed. It's a good way to explain it. So the nervous system is sending the messages, but then it's important to understand that muscle cells are also different than cells in the rest of your body. So this was new news to me. I used to think of cells as like a fried egg.
Hmm.
Nucleus in the middle, cell wall around. That's what I was taught. Muscle cells are more like a slinky. There's still a nucleus in there, but the slinky comes together to flex and it releases to extend. So if you think about your bicep, I'm flexing my bicep. The tricep slinkies have to open. And you're talking about millions of slinkies working together to make that happen. You also, that's a little bit harder to explain. Do you know about fascia?
I'm familiar with the fascia in my body and this sort of connective tissue that can sometimes get tight and need like stretching or released. But I would love it if you could explain it in your own words.
So it's also innervated, meaning nerves and send messages through the fascia. And so the fascia is connective tissue. It's the white stuff that you see in a piece of meat that's not the muscle of the meat. It's more like packing tape in some places. So the top of your head, it's really thick. Back of your lower back, you can imagine and feel around, it's really thick. But if you go to the airport and you see them wrap up luggage to go on a long trip, the plastic, it's then it turns
Mm-hmm.
your luggage, you're wrapped up that way. So if you think about like your internal obliques are like that, your external obliques, your transverse abdominis, you've got all those layers on top of layers that are then wrapped in connective tissue and they can get sticky against each other. They can get sticky for many reasons. Overuse of being in the same shape and not putting your body through its full ranges of motion all the time, but also emotions. And that was the thing that really blew my mind and drew me into the craniosacral is I had emotions trapped in my body that I had not fully processed in the moment that I experienced them, which is way more likely to happen with neurodiverse people, that I needed to have this extra zhuzh to process those emotions and let them go through my body.
Okay, so two questions. First of all, how can you prove that emotions um can get trapped in this fascia? How do you prove that? Like
So I don't know totally how to prove it, but there's a quote in one of our textbooks, the craniosacral textbook, and plus it just happens all the time. People have emotional releases with this therapy. It Emotional release can happen in other times. So have you done yoga trainings, yoga school?
no, just plenty of yoga,
No.
but no training.
But maybe have you ever had an experience in yoga? You had an emotional moment or somebody else you've seen have emotion come out?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, I hold a lot of emotion in my hips.
Okay. Not to say that craniosacral is the only way to get emotion out of the body. There are many other ways. So that was my first experience when I did yoga school. They taught us you might have students who have this emotional experience. It may happen to you. It just happens sometimes. Of that is finally letting the emotion come through. Okay. So because you've maybe now experienced it, you're like, okay, I have seen that happen. That is a phenomenon. I don't know how to prove
Mm,
that is the case. But in this textbook, the thing that convinced me the most, it's a physicist who said, okay, If we can store a symphony, the recording of a symphony on a VHS tape, that's technically a piece of plastic.
Hmm.
Or if you could store it on a DVD, that's a piece of plastic. Sound and image, then is it so unbelievable that you could store a memory and it's a tuned emotion on a piece of your liver?
Hmm.
Is that so insane to you or in your hips?
Yeah, I'm asking the question just to see what you say, but it doesn't mean I don't
Yeah.
agree with you.
Yeah.
One of the books that's on my list, but I've not read it, but I basically know what it'll be about based on the title is like The Body Keeps
The
the
body
Score.
keeps the score. Yeah.
Mm.
Book actually doesn't talk about cranio, but it talks about other methods like EDR, eye movement desensitization reprocessing. I've done that kind of therapy and I have had good results from it. It didn't get all of it out. It also talks about creating, say you're in group therapy with 20 other people, picking the people and saying, like, you're going to be my real mom. You're going to
Mm.
represent my real dad. You're going to represent my ideal mom. And you're going to represent my ideal dad, and creating like a tableau of how you wish a scenario had gone down. That can create emotional release for people. So there's so many different ways. I just personally had a much more profound experience through CranioSacral than I ever had through yoga or EMDR or some of the other things that I've tried that can help release emotion. Journaling can release emotion, meditation.
Yes to all of those things, Heather.
Yeah.
I want to just circle back to this sort of analogy you had with the circuit device,
So that's a
and the
start in
fascia.
cranium. Yeah.
Yes, but in simple terms, how would you define it?
So you have liquid around your brain and spinal cord called your cerebral spinal fluid. Have you heard about that? Does that make sense
Mhm,
to you? That exists.
mhm.
Okay. And maybe you've ever seen a baby, like their head slightly throbs like this. Have you seen that? You can see it on a baby. It's much harder to see on an adult because they used to think. I'm showing Ben a model of a skull and it's multicolored. And each of the colors represent the different bones of the skull. So the one on your forehead is your frontal bone. You've got two parietal bones in the back, your occiput, so your temporal bones. So a lot of these, your mandible and your maxilla. We do know the names of these. Now, that fluid inside your brain, it's in a semi-hydraulic system, and that's what makes it make the baby's head ever so slightly elongate. So I go hot dog, hamburger. It makes your skull get slightly elongated. It's filling and then extending. So what that also does is while the person is on the table, it makes their shoulders and feet ever so slightly roll out and in. Okay. So and this is happening all the time, like 5 to
S
12
so
cycles per minute.
so just so I understand correctly, this sort of I'm gonna use the word is maybe not correct, hydraulic system or the system of moving plates as they move will have this effect on your feet. Is that what you're saying?
It's happening right now and you just are not noticing it. It's just as much as your respiratory system is a system and your circulatory and your digestive system, your craniosacral system is a system
Hmm.
of this cerebral spinal fluid going around your brain and spinal cord. And it becomes a way for a therapist to tune into it to know where the restrictions are in your body. And then also the people that came up with the modality, it was made up by osteopaths. So doctors who created these methods, because osteopaths usually work on things that are really causing people pathologies, lots of problems of like their heads really hurt and they need a significant intervention. But actually, you can do things that are very soft and have results. So, this one osteopath was like, I'm going to take these very soft techniques and teach them to massage therapists because it's too important for the world to miss out on and to only think of osteopathy as a serious intervention. So sometimes in Europe, an osteopath will do, it's just really hard to know who to go to because there's a lot of overlap in our skill sets.
Hmm.
But the other important thing to know is that I used to think that my brain was just a lump in my head. I knew about right and left brain, but I'm now showing Ben a model. I can basically see it. Can you imagine your brain around this model and you're going through space, right?
Mhm.
So these membranes, I'm showing Ben a model of the membranes in the brain to say that down the middle of the skull and across, separating upstairs and downstairs. The membranes are more like balloons, and the texture of your brain is more like oatmeal. And then you have a whole other balloon like membrane around and down the spinal cord, the fluid, and then a whole other membrane. And these central membranes are more attached on the skull at the mohawk place and along the sides where your ears are, like a monk's kind of thing. So, in addition to being able to feel for the restrictions, we have different moves, protocols, techniques, whatever you want to call it, of okay, stretch the membranes from this direction, stretch the membranes from that direction. And like I showed you the bones before, can you see that the bone is pink in the middle? Like these are
Yeah.
orange, but this one is pink.
So that would be, yeah.
Do you know the name of that bone? Like it goes, your eye goes through it.
So you're pointing to the sort of this area that's like right behind the eyeballs, and I guess behind this bone, the nose bone, whatever this is called.
It's part of your maxilla, your upper jaw. And then you
Uh-huh.
have a little tiny nasal bone at the end here. It's so fascinating to me. Can't you see me info dumping in front of you? Like, so the pink one's called the sphenoid. And most people don't know that one, but it's like the keystone of your whole head because it touches so many bones. And the only way that we as therapists can touch it is through your temples. So that's often why you rub your temples because it will influence the sphenoid.
Mm.
And so all these other bones, like the blue one, the frontal bone, your forehead bone, we use our third finger, whatever you want to call it, and grab underneath the eyebrows and try to lift it. If the person's laying on the table, we're trying to lift it towards the ceiling. That's how that bone can stretch the membrane.
So you're kind of
Then
getting
the
around under the eye almost.
not under the eye, under the eyebrow. It's like there's a
Uh-huh.
little bit of grip there and it's so light. Like they also teach us, they put a US nickel in our hand and that's 5 grams. That is how much pressure the little tugboat of them on the membranes that otherwise it's going to just seize up. Oh no, we're not safe.
Mm.
We're not changing our structure at all.
Yeah.
And you can
So you
experience that. Have you ever been in a massage where somebody mashes you way too hard for that place on
mhm.
you? You guard. That's just a natural reaction. So some parts of the body need very gentle traction or compression to loosen up. And that is what craniosacral is. Listening to the fluid, how it moves. When we can't feel it, that's where we need to work. It's not able to get through.
Mm.
And then also in the same way that we could all line up according to height, we can line up according to how sensitive our nervous systems are. I have a really sensitive nervous system. I'm going to be able to hear something that's 3 rooms away that maybe somebody else can't hear. If lights are a certain way, they bother me. They don't bother other people. Strong scents bother me. They don't bother other people.
So I really love the detail that you've been able to go into. I would like to just zoom out now and just say, how is this training? How has this kind of therapy influenced your approach to healing and to your own personal growth?
So I would say it's now a core therapy that yes, there are restrictions that you want to get rid of that are maybe causing you migraines or that are part of the pattern of that's creating tension in your body that is giving you long-term pain. But it is also a way to down regulate the nervous system. So when I used that word rev before,
Mhm.
that when you touch different people feel differently. So now that I've touched thousands of people, some people come to the table feeling very buzzy, like that ampedness. Their rev is way up. And some people are very depleted and they're very down. And that sensation changes over the hour of having the soft touches. And I can't go into all the different techniques that we do, but there are different things to help person. It's basically just touching them with focused intention.
I
So
see.
how does it all fit in? It's just one of the tools because what I'm starting to realize is okay, highly sensitive people that are neurodiverse, like myself, are the ones who most are more likely to seek it out and benefit from it and not feel like, what kind of bullshit is this? But it's not the only therapy that I seek out on a regular basis. And last week, I just spent a week learning how to do on a completely different end of the scale. If craniosacral is generally 5 grams of pressure, I went and learned how to massage people with my feet with very deep pressure. That one's called Sarga. And it's different than, so maybe you've come across ashiatsu, where the therapist is holding onto bars above the table. Have you ever seen that?
Mhm.
That kind, it creates a very perpendicular pressure with the person. Or if there's a lot of, you can just do compressions into the person, or maybe they put quite a lot of massage oil on the person. So it's really slidey. The one I learned is there's a piece of fabric that is attached to the table, and then it goes around the shoulders of the therapist so they can lean into it. And it's creating, I'm pushing into the fabric as I'm pushing with my foot into the person. And that creates an oblique angle of tension. And by doing that connects, it's fascial release. So it's fascia will release in different ways depending on the kind of restriction it is. And that one, like, I wanted to do it because you watch that, you look at a video of it, and it's like, I want that.
Mhm.
Whereas craniosacral looks like nothing. I have to go through all these explainers to be like, maybe I'll try it. It sounds weird."
So I mean, you really are trying a lot of different things out here, but you used the term earlier, you see yourself becoming I think it was a health strategist, but it might be the right word.
A well-being
Well,
strategist or something like that. Yeah.
yeah, how are you integrating all of this?
So I think it will be by doing offsites where you're going to come to where I am, and we'll do, like, you've never done gyrokinesis. Like, we
No?
could do some right now. Let's do
Okay,
2 moves. So
let's do it.
imagine you're listening to the wall. You're a seaweed in the ocean.
Okay.
You met Matthew Scott, right? He calls this one eavesdropper. You're eavesdropping over here. You're
Oh, yeah.
eavesdropping over here.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, I see
So
that, I
that's
see
one
that.
of the moves. You do it 8 times and you breathe while you're doing it. And the opposite, you dive with your head. So remember Stevie Wonder. And I don't know if
Oh,
you can tell, but do you see how your head is going like that versus
yeah.
you don't have as much neck mobility, no offense, as I
No,
do.
I
Because I
no,
do
that's
this
okay.
every fucking day.
I've I'm gonna try now, but I have an ongoing issue in my shoulder, and it's bleed radiating into my neck.
So I know maybe 300 different moves that are based on the movements of the spine. So like another one would be your arms are coming up to shoulder length, and then you're drilling down your hands by your side. So you're arching your spine as your arms come up, inhaling, you're exhaling as your arms go down by your side. Oh, that's another one. Just up to shoulder height,
Oh,
drilling down by your side. Yeah.
I'm,
You're
doing
just
one.
gonna feel like a totally different person if you do 100 moves that are all designed around, so your spine arches, curls, side arches where like my ear and my hip are coming closer together, side arch, and spiraling, looking back behind you. You have
But,
24 vertebrae and they never get to go through their full range of motion for most people.
so how are you I your how does this live right now, though, in relation to being also a strategist, if at all?
So it helps me to realize when my nervous system is more amped and to really monitor that. That is not a healthy zone for me. How can I do this other work that I like to do and I'm interested in, but keep my nervous system even keeled? That's one way it fits in. Two, like when I've done work in California where I am, certified to work, I have brought my table with me. So I have worked on my colleagues, I have worked on my clients inside of the project. It's adjacent, it's not really blended together, but it's also taught me things like learning things about the body have made it so that I can work on brands and understand them from a different angle. Like I'm more interested in health and wellness brands than I was before.
I'm last year was nerding out a lot on different things, and have you experimented with metabolic health, like wearing CGMs, for example?
No, but you brought that
Uh,
up when we saw each other. Yeah.
so CGMs are constant glucose monitors. They're normally used by diabetics to make sure that they keep a check on their blood sugar levels, and so they can either put insulin in their body or eat something depending on where they're at. But we're all now starting to experiment with what is the implications of a yo-yoing blood sugar on a regular person who has a healthy pancreas. And yeah, I personally found it hugely eye-opening into how my mental state just basically I'm so much more clear-minded, less prone to anxious thoughts if I just do a few little tricks. And it doesn't mean, oh, no sugar. It means there's so many little hacks. I mean, you can literally change the way you eat different food types, and it will have a dampened effect on your blood sugar, your glycemic response. So instead of just
Mhm.
eating the fries straight away, you eat the protein and you eat the fats, and then you eat the carbs. And it can just that alone can completely dampen the response and lead to a much more stable day and a much more pleasant night's sleep. But it reminds me of what you were saying about how we all respond differently to these treatments. It's the same with food. You could eat a banana and I can eat a banana, but it may not affect me in the same way it will not affect me the way it will affect you. Um,
Has that impacted your work? Is it adjacent or is it embedded?
Currently, it is just adjacent in lifestyle, but I want to work for these new tech startups that are producing these environments, for example. Spoiler alert. Yeah, it's hard. It's hard. The only place that it shows up at the moment is in lifestyle. But the reason I asked you is I'm curious how you're doing it and how your approach to it.
I would say that I see probably around 10 people a week from my local community to just do craniosacral on them. And I probably envision a future where I'm doing that. So right now I'm doing it 2 days a week. And I think I'll get to the point where I'm doing Sarga on people 2 days a week. And maybe I'm not going to do brand work anymore.
Mhm. Would you
That's
like
kind
that?
of it's I don't know, because the thing is, like, when I get to know people better, if say I've done cranio on them 2 or 3 times and I start to get to know them and they know that I do business strategy, we sometimes end up talking about their business life
Mm,
in relation to their health. And by having a clear path forward in business, that takes away tension and stress. On the flip side, when I meet people and I understand their issues, it's if I meet somebody and they're having daily migraine, craniosacral may not be the thing that stops that, and it may not be the best thing for them. And so that's where my strategist brain comes in. And have you tried this? Have you tried this? Have you tried this? And maybe I do one of those things. Like the gyrokinesis is really applicable to most people, but they may not enjoy doing it. But there's things like neuro emotional technique that I found to be extremely effective for me, but I'm probably not going to go get trained in it. So I
mhm.
refer people out to do that kind of therapy.
Okay. So we've talked a lot about we've been speaking for an hour and we've covered a lot of ground. And I feel like I've learned quite a few things specifically about craniosacral therapy, which is super interesting. But I'd like to start draw this conversation to a close by asking a few sort of like open questions, which I feel like a little sort of list of questions I'm asking myself, which may be very revealing about where I'm at in my life. And the idea here is not to be super in the detail about what's going on in my life, but just to ask these questions so that I may hear a perspective that may help me in my own process. So you asked these.
Lay it on the table, Ben. What's going on?
Okay. Um, Here's a question for you. How do you retake your passion? Have you ever lost your passion? And what did you do to get it back?
I don't know that I've lost my passion, but I have definitely been depressed and overcome by grief. Melinda passed away the same week that one of my uncles died by suicide. And that was extremely traumatic for me.
Would you
And
just set the
getting
context of who Melinda is, please?
Okay, so Melinda was our managing director at Strawberry Frog, and she was an incredible woman. and I just adored her to pieces. And she passed away in 2013 from an aneurysm, which was very sudden and it happened in a business meeting. So it was like all kinds of layers to that. Of she was a very healthy person from the outside, very thin, gym rat kind of person, but also super rev.
Mm.
Her nervous system was on rev a lot. And she passed away in her early 60s. I think I've had these few points in my life. So when I was 8 years old, my I had another uncle die by suicide. My grandmother died in the same sort of span of time, and the family dog died. So I would say there's these sort of points in time where suicide is it was so incomprehensible to me of like how much it impacts the entire group of people that have experienced it, cultural overlays of my family lied to not my parents, but the children of the uncle have lied to their children, saying that uncle died from a heart attack. So that creates tension and secrecy and stuff that I don't agree with and align with. Psychology side of it, of needing to work through those things and find a method that works for me. So, like the EMDR really helped me, the craniosacral really helped me. And to be able to get over those things helped me reconnect with my passion or find new passions.
Yeah, so an acknowledgement that you are in that place in the
Totally.
first place, and to not
And then losing love too, or like realizing that you're incompatible and that there's another cultural overlay there of like, I come from Texas where you get married one time, usually
Mm.
when you're still like a fucking teenager and you are set for life and there will never be anyone else, you know? And like, I've now been divorced twice. And I've had another significant relationship, like when I was with you, when I worked with you, that we had lived together and that in it. So each of those relationships were very significant to me and difficult to get over. And, for a time disconnected me from other passions.
on the topic of love, like, you've married twice and I mean, I saw you this summer, you seem very much in love again. What's your attitude towards love?
My attitude towards love is that it's the most important foundational part of life. So getting that or feeling good about that in your life. Have you ever been told the analogy of imagine there's a cylinder and you have rocks, gravel, and sand? That if you put the sand into the cylinder, then the gravel, and then the big rocks, they won't all fit. But if you put the big rocks in and then the gravel around it and then the sand, they can all fit. So to me, love is a rock and it's something you need to put it in the cylinder first.
Mm. Ooh, I like that.
So yeah, I don't think that it's a sign that a relationship is a failure because it didn't last your entire lifetime.
Mm.
I believe that you change, and oftentimes people do not change together unless you're really conscious about it. And also, where I don't think it's conscious and unconscious, I think it's conscious and non conscious is a lot of things. Like you could bring it to mind if we talked about it, but it's just not in your current awareness. It's not necessarily influencing you, but it impacts so many other things of making you feel stable in your life.
So on the backside of that, what would be your advice to someone who maybe their love is coming to an end?
Yeah, accept it. And once you really decided, decide. Make a decision and then you'll know. If you're thinking about that it's over, it's probably over.
Yeah. I had a conversation with someone the other day and they recently broken up with someone. And I think one of the things that came out of their mouth was, we broke up X amount of time ago, but I think actually I decided about 2 years ago.
Yeah, I think that's really common.
All right. Next little question for you.
All right, let's hear it.
How can you be raw and vulnerable publicly without destroying your own credibility?
So I think I alluded to this earlier that I'm taking this TikTok class and I have learned absolutely so much from taking it. Of my teacher is he's either like late 20s, early 30s, young person, and talks about you have a gift to share. You can help someone else on their path. Are you really going to let your insecurities get in the way of you helping people while you're here? And that's been particularly impactful for me because this summer I had a huge eczema flare up on my face. So it's like, I don't want to be on camera. I feel like I look hideous, but I'm doing it anyway. So,
Mhm.
and it's been getting better. It's not gonna, these are things that are slow and like other people won't notice it that much. And like you can cover it up with makeup and da da da. But I would say that's a really practical example of this would be a reason that would hold me back from doing this. But when I realize I still have value to add, I think a lot of people that I meet who are significantly older than me who are like, I don't even look in the mirror. I hate the way I look. I hate this. It's so sad to me because I get so much value out of them and I don't want to be that to somebody else of like, I'm not going to give what I have to give because I'm self-conscious, embarrassed. I feel vulnerable. So I
Yeah, I
just
know
try
that,
and get over it.
these interviews, this podcast, whatever you want to call it, it's a question I'm asking myself because I want to be relatively honest, and to reveal what's going on in my mind or my heart. Um, but you also need to find, I think I'm trying to find like the window where you have had enough reflection and enough understanding of what it is before you make it clear. But I think what you're
Yeah.
describing is a nice impetus to make sure you don't hold it and you don't hide, which is another sort of
Yeah.
question I have, which is very abstract, which is like, why do we hide? Why do we do that?
I
Um,
think it's embedded in our if you look at evolutionary stuff, it used to be we were in one group. And if you were excluded from the group, that meant no survival. But now we're in many groups. So if you feel excluded from one group, it casts a negative shadow over everything rather than, okay, I fucked up at work. That doesn't necessarily have any impact on my family life or this other community that I'm a part of, but I can see how it's impacted my mood or I'm trying to use my logic brain to see what part. So there's a model of of the brain that's not necessarily exact, but it's you have the reptilian brain, the mammalian brain, and then like the advanced frontal cortex kind of thing. Of like most of that I think is coming from the lizard brain and maybe the mammalian connection part. But is
Interesting.
it really coming from here? Okay, I see these different groups. I see how humans evolved, and we're living in a time that is so different from all of this evolution that made the hard and software of who we are. And
Have
that
you
really helps me.
have you read A General Theory of Love?
No, should I?
Yeah, the first chapter is
Writing it down.
basically about the brain. It's by two or three people. It's really beautifully written. My friend,
Okay,
he's a psychotherapist. He got me onto it.
I'll read it.
Check it out. It's just this. I'm having a lovely conversation. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. This was fun. It's so good to see you.
Yeah, it's good to see you too. I'm just trying to decide whether I should ask you one or more two questions. We've got another 15 minutes, but yeah, why not? Let's just keep going through just a bit longer. Okay, let's see. Okay, yeah, I was on Instagram about a week ago and I saw this. It's going to not sound very appropriate. I say this, but he looked Southeast Asian. He looked like he could be a monk. But could maybe have been a samurai. Like very nice, beautiful appearance. And it was a short reel that said something like, sometimes you need to know when you need to throw it all out. You need to empty the cup, empty the tea and pour yourself some new tea. I was like, oh, I like that. But I thought I had to integrate everything from the past into the present and to go to the future. The question is, sometimes they say you need to throw it all out and move on. Is that always true? And if so, when?
For me, that's been in ending relationships and needing to move away from that person. So I left Portland after getting divorced and moved to Oakland, California because I wanted a fresh start. I would say that's been the most that has applied to me because with my work, I can't help but be a strategist. It really is who I am, or it's been embedded in me, indoctrinated in me so much, and I don't want to let go of it. And what does that mean to me? I'm going to look, and as long as time allows, I'm going to look and absorb and ask questions. And then when I have to decide, I will have to decide.
Yeah. But okay, maybe put it more simply. Do you believe in this statement or not? Like, do you think that it is more about totally letting go of something, or is it about trying to acknowledge what you have and accept it and build on top of it?
I think that comes in the discovery of, is this serving me or not serving me? So if I decided that the relationship was not serving me,
Hmm.
completely cut it out.
Could be a work
Whereas there's,
relationship, just to be clear.
yeah,
Yeah.
for sure, for
Hmm.
sure. But then if it's like wellness and strategy, they both serve me to a degree. And I like the idea of them being blended. So I'm pursuing the blend.
Yeah, exactly. So professionally speaking, that works for me. I think in the instance of a relationship, doesn't always work.
Maybe if you're polyamorous.
True. How do you feel
Yeah.
about polyamory?
Uh, the pandemic was a good time to research it and to see, is that me? Is that why I'm on my second divorce? I'm thinking about it. Yeah, it's not for me,
Hmm.
but it's for some people.
Can I ask why?
Can you ask why? Sure, you can ask why. I just really like knowing somebody very completely and having that kind of trust and connection
Hmm.
with one person.
Yeah, I've never been in a polyamorous relationship, but I certainly curious. It would be a tough line to walk, but I have heard people talk about it that are more involved in it. And I can't help but also connect with some truth in it. This idea of sharing more love can give you more love, and that it
Mhm.
creates more abundance of it. And that it's not about, if I give my love to this person, I will not be able to give it to that person and they will not be able to receive it. But I do think it does really come down to the person, I suppose. I prefer, yeah, I don't know. For me, it's also this idea of, I associate intimacy with a one on one kind of thing.
I think it depends on how it's structured. So I'll point out two references. So there was a show in America on Netflix called How to Build a Sex Room. Did you catch that?
I heard the title, I've not seen it.
It's pretty hilarious. It's essentially ethnographies where the Mary Poppins of sex rooms comes in and she'd ask them like, why do you want a sex room? And what are you into? So some of it is traditional married couples, but one of the episodes is about 7 people who are all in a relationship together. And there's no hierarchy of this is a primary relationship and these are secondary. They're in like a 7-person relationship.
Hmm.
Like, and that works for them. And so watching that show and seeing how they are, it's like, nope, that's not me. I would not want to be in a 7-person relationship.
Nice.
But then I have another person that I know who their tag on TikTok is openly committed.
Hmm.
And that person has been a strategist. I don't think she ever says her real name on, so I won't divulge her. I think she says her first name for sure on. But so she has a primary relationship with her husband and she has children, but then they're allowed to date. They're ethically non-monogamous is their lingo that they use. And that makes a little bit more sense to me, particularly in the context of their relationship of, for example, she likes to go do things like snowboarding and really active outdoors things, and that's not his thing at all. So she tends to date people who like to do those things and share with them. She's also found out she's bisexual, so she sometimes dates women.
Hmm.
But it's okay, you can't provide that.
I love,
So I think it
yeah,
really depends.
I love hearing that example because it's a sign of a healthy relationship. This idea of being able to trust in that person to that they will not fly away in the process, but they will actually come back more grounded, more grateful, more connected and appreciative to that person, but also feel more fulfilled. Um,
Exactly. So I think
yeah,
it comes down to, if you think you're like a primary partner kind of person, are you finding a lot of compatibility and all the getting your needs met from that one relationship, or no? I find that I've been able to find somebody where I'm able to get my needs met.
love it.
Yeah. How about you, Ben?
What's
Are we allowed to send? Are you dating? Are we allowed to send you people?
no comments?
Man, that's
No,
vulnerable.
no. My situation is complicated, and I would say that I would, because of very recent events, it's oh no, let me rephrase this. In my past, I have been in a relationship that ended very publicly, and I was not the one that was public about it, and it was quite upsetting. To respect my current situation, I wouldn't at this time talk about stuff, wrong word, recent events because they are so recent.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's clear.
Yeah. Okay, last question, very abstract. Here we go. We got 7 minutes. What do you trust in?
Hmm. I trust in people that I believe are wiser than me. I believe in wisdom. I trust in wisdom. And what does that mean? Like knowledge that has an application and it's very clear that it is true, correct. I'm genuinely, I think that is what made me pull away from strategy. Like I spent more time with these luminary people, and it's actually, I don't aspire to be you. I don't aspire to be not very well, not very fit, continuing to climb this career ladder. It just didn't appeal to me, like when I see it in practice. But now I do feel myself in the wellness world feeling aspirational towards, I do want to be like this person. Oftentimes in my cranio world, I want to be their mind. I don't want to be their body. And then when I'm over in the movement world, I want to be their body, but their mind feels like it's not getting enough time to play. So that's why I keep trying to bring these two things together.
Hmm. Heather, I have really enjoyed talking to you today. And I think that wanting to go on this journey of talking about healing, the practice of healing, you've brought a lot to the table today. And I'm just super grateful for your time. So thank you so much for sitting with me today.
Thank you, Ben, for having me.
Thank you.